In today's episode, I catch up with Erchana Murray Bartlett, the current Guinness World Record Holder for the most consecutive marathons run by a female. From August 2022 to January 2023, Erchana ran 150 marathons in 150 consecutive days, from the tip of Australia in Cape York to the toe of Australia in Melbourne. Her journey inspired thousands of people from all over the world and raised over $132,000 for her charity partner, the Wilderness Society, who help protect Australia's unique wildlife and places.
The idea was actually a childhood dream, and again born from my personality of always setting tiny challenges for myself. So it was there, and it was, it was something I thought of, but I kind of put it on a shelf when it gathered dust for decades.
I followed her journey closely and was lucky enough to join her on day 55 and day 94 of her challenge. This episode was recorded in early March this year, just 7 weeks post her epic challenge. Since then, she has her energy back and recently smashed out a strong half marathon and marathon in back-to-back days at the Gold Coast Marathon. I can't wait to see what she does next. If you'd like to connect with Erchana, the best place to do so is on Instagram at Erchana_. It was a pleasure to host her on the podcast, and we hope you enjoy it. Welcome back to the First 42K podcast, and today I'm so excited because I'm joined by the amazing Erchana Murray Bartlett, who is the world record holder for the most consecutive marathons for women. Just recently finished an epic campaign, 150 marathons in 150 days. Welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me. It's very exciting.
It's nice to be chatting with you. I think to give people some context, we met back in Mackay. Mm-hmm. So that was day 55 of your epic journey. I can't believe another 95 days to go following that. And I jumped in for a little 20 kilometres while you were smashing out just another marathon.
Yeah, well, to put it into perspective, I'd actually been following Sean's run for a lot longer before that. So I felt like virtually I knew who you were. But yeah, it's the first time we met face to face. And then you ran with me a second time. I don't know. It would have been halfway.
I think it was day 94.
Yeah, around the 4,000K mark when we were in Brisbane. Oh, Gold Coast. Yeah. So, yeah, you definitely threw a lot of support behind it. So, thank you.
No, thank you for doing what you did. It was incredible to see. And I think, more people should be getting behind people doing this sort of thing. And you did it for the right reasons. You raised some money for the Wilderness Society. How was that experience for you?
It was awesome. So, I guess I've had a lifelong passion for native Australian animals and the wilderness in general. I've always been a road runner, but my enjoyment's been through running through the trails and all the lush greenery that surrounded my house. So it was a bit of a no-brainer when I realised that Australia had this biodiversity loss crisis. We're world leaders in biodiversity loss. It was always my cause. It was, my why was kind of born from where I grew up as a child. So my goal was to raise $10 per kilometre, and I doubled that. So that was cool.
You smashed that. That was incredible. And it was awesome to see. It just grew so much momentum, and the fundraising, just really towards the end. What was the total amount raised?
It was like $132 something thousand. So that's cool. I mean,
that's huge.
I didn't push the fundraiser as much as I could have. It was always there, and I was always promoting it, but it was also about the awareness side of it. I know that can be a bit of an arbitrary word, but it was also about just identifying the fact that we do have an extinction crisis, and that every state and territory that I ran through, the representative animal is currently endangered. So that's, the koala in Queensland, the Gangang cockatoo in Canberra, the leadbeater's possum in Victoria. These are all critical animals to our, that have these global significance, and they're all not likely to be around in the next few decades. So yeah, it was a really powerful partnership for me. If anything, off the back of Tip to Toe, it's taught me that I would love to work further in conservation or activism or awareness raising. So I think that was the biggest learning for me.
Yeah, I love that. I think, I didn't know any of that, as in I didn't know that the koala was endangered in Queensland and these other ones in the different states as well. So I think, you really did bring that awareness, which is incredible. It's always, it's a hard thing to do. And I know you were doing so much as well as running. It wasn't just going and running these distances, which is a marathon every single day. But afterwards, you were even speaking in schools and sharing the message and jumping on podcasts throughout the run as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The days were crazy. So I left in August at the Cape. So the entire run was through summer. which my objective there was to not get rained on while I was camping and living. But it did mean that because it was so hot, I would get up at 4:30 and start running as the sun rose. And then even if it took me 4, 5, 6 hours on a really horrendous day, I'd still be back before lunch. So my afternoons were filled with the whole message because I wanted it to be just as much about the message as the run. So I would see schools and would talk about Australian biodiversity and its significance. We'd talk about goal setting and, just chasing your dreams. I'd also visit local community groups that were doing their own thing to protect the at-risk animals in their space. I went and saw a lot of wildlife carers. I met this lady, shout out to Trish, in Queensland, and she had not slept for more than 2 hours in decades because she has this cycle of animals that all have different feeding schedules. So she feeds the bats at night every 2 hours, then she feeds the roos, and then she feeds her turtles. And she has this place that has, infinite animals, but also everyone that has a pet that no longer can house that pet, they put them there too. So it was this eclectic native and non-native farm. But yeah, just the people that have dedicated their lives to trying to help was so inspiring.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I don't think I could do that. I choose running.
2 hours sleep per night. That is, good on her. That's
crazy.
And I think, and that's what I love talking to people who are so passionate. Obviously, we share that passion in through running and running to then help others. Yet at the same time, I just love following people who are passionate about something, and I'm sure you're the same. And
absolutely.
This woman, that's just awesome.
But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to use my platform to not just share the Wilderness Society's cause, but to share the cause and the stories, more so the stories of everybody that was doing something, because, my belief is that we're going to need to work together to be a loud enough voice to make change. So by sharing that, if you want to make a difference or do something, there's so many other people doing it too. Pretty much just try and promote a community. So yeah, I definitely did that. And then if I wasn't doing that, I was, podcasts or hustling. Because to be honest, there's so much. It's okay to run, but sharing the story takes, as you would know, takes as much work. You've got to hustle to get media attention, to put your story out there, to show that it deserves to be told. And to be honest, that's just as hard.
Absolutely. And a lot of energy in doing so. And I think you did an incredible job on social media to really show that story. And it was largely just you and Riley, your partner. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So I had my parents for the first 5 weeks, but we were out there for 22, 24 weeks. So only a small part. And that's because the tip of Australia is all corrugated roads and it was forward driving, and I'm not a very good forward driver. So my dad took his his long service leave, to come up and just make sure we got through that safe bit. And we did need the extra hands because there's no stores. So you needed to carry all your water with you or your food with you. To be honest, you just finish on the side of the road and then you camp there because there's no towns. And so, starting was intense because I not only gave up my apartment and this job that I'd only recently got a promotion for, but I then, gently encouraged my partner to quit his jobs, quit his soccer team, come with me, and then my dad to take his long service leave, something he's worked 10 years for. Yeah. So the pressure I felt at the very start to make this work was astronomical.
That's amazing. But also it shows their belief in you. They've jumped at this.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't they? What an experience.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I told myself more so than them, is just if this fails in a heap, it's going to be a wild adventure. And to be honest, just getting to the Cape itself is awesome. So it would have been okay and it would have been wild and extreme and fun, but it was terrifying at the same time.
It was never going to fail. I think from when I met you on day 55, I'm like, she's going to do it. So to, again, give a little bit more context, on that day 55 in Mackay, I was up there for a speaking gig the night before, and Erchana, I messaged her. I was like, I'm actually right near you. Where are you running from? I'd love to go to you and start running. And Erchana's like, no, where are you? I'll come to you. So not only was she just out there running a marathon every day, but even trying to make it easier for me to jump in.
That was a really fun day. We actually went really fast. That was the day, though, I'll never forget it, that I went to the bathroom not long after you'd turned in and forgot to start my watch. Oh. So I ended up running, I think, 46 or 47K that day because I'd run 3 or 4 at that same clip and was so angry.
I bet. That's tough.
I never did it again. And so I used to run with groups and I'd be looking at my watch, every literally 50 meters. And people would say to me, "Oh, are we going, is the pace okay?" Thinking that I do not care about the pace. I'm just making sure my Garmin's working, that I've turned it on.
Yeah, well, I love that you ran with so many groups. I think that that's incredible. I know how hard it is out there when you're doing it day after day. You're under so much fatigue and sometimes it's hard to have these conversations, but you were truly thinking about these other people as well and how much it would mean for them to come and run with you. And I love that because I think so often, some people out there, they're not about running with others, and you really showed that was what your run was about.
Absolutely. And for me too, I mean, running with people is beautiful. It's how I've always ran. It's why I got into running in the start, was to meet people in Melbourne where I was living at the time, and I wanted to meet new friends and build community, and that was never going to change out there. I think that when you say yes to running with a local running club, you get to see their culture, you get to see their trails. And I think it made Tip to Toe so beautiful because I don't know where every park is. I don't know where all the trails are. So I definitely lent on everybody else to show me the best parts of wherever they're from. And they're the most unforgettable parts.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have no doubt. I think if there was a favourite day, obviously ending is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But was there a day in the middle, or maybe like 2/3 of the way through, or something that stood out as well?
Oh, our run was pretty special. No, I've got a very key favourite run, and it's the Warburton Rail Trail, so from Warburton to Seville. To Lilydale. It's exactly 40 Ks. I used to do it all the time growing up because that's where I grew up. And I remember thinking, wow, this is me running the marathon through the area I grew up in, that kind of is where this cause was born from. So that felt really significant. And then I rocked up at the start line, 7 a.m. or something. And it was just bustling with people, and not just runners, because a lot of runners had been joining, but my old soccer team, who are now all have knee-high kids, all came with their bikes and put their kids in the bike. Then, random family members and friends from high school all came. So the contingency of bikes that were going with me was as big as the runners. So we had this kind of flock of humans running, then this big flock of bikes. There was people along the trail with icy poles and water stops, and it just turned into this affair. So that one was definitely unforgettable just because of the significance it held to me.
Absolutely. That's special. And so that would have been the last few days, right?
It was, yeah. It was only 3 days before I finished. And then that last week was special because even the day before I finished, I just left that one private and just went with my 3 sisters and my mum on the bike. And that was so funny because we left kind of late again because, they weren't going to get up at 4. And then within 7 Ks, that were too cold. So they had to call my dad to come and deliver jumpers. And then we went up a hill. That was too hard. Then their bums were sore. Then their wrists were sore. Then they had to stop for muffins. I was like, come on, team. This is a world record attempt. But they were still my sisters,
Are you giving them shit though? Being like, I've been getting up at 4 for 149 days and you can't get up at 4 once?
Once. You can't even ride 42 once. It was so funny. But it's just the fact that they just didn't care. They were just my sisters at the end of the day made me laugh so much. But yeah, there were so many memorable moments. Toowoomba was fantastic just because the community there really rallied. Albury Wodonga, they had kind of created an entire event around this, and so there was 11 people that ran the entire marathon with me. Wow. And I have a key standout memory of this lady who her coach had prescribed her 20 Ks for the day. And so when we got to 20 Ks, I looked and I said, "Oh, thank you so much for joining." And she's like, "No, I'm here to the end. This is so infectious." And she ended up running the entire 42 Ks. And when she realized we were going to go for a sub 4, she then kind of rallied the troops so we wouldn't stop so she could get this sub 4 marathon. And it was awesome, just the fact that she went from just joining me to making it about her first marathon and her own personal achievement kind of was just awesome. And she did. She ran 3 hours 50 something.
Wow. That's a running coach's worst nightmare.
Yeah, I know.
Someone who jumps from 20 straight to a marathon, but good on her. And, you really inspired her out there to go and do that. So that's unreal. Was there, what was the funniest moment on the trip? I'm sure there was plenty.
One time I got my hair caught in the Velcro of the tent for ages. I was just stuck there. And when you're just so tired, you have no energy to I just stayed there until eventually I think my partner had to cut me out when he got home. So I got swooped. But I ran through magpie season. I reckon I got swooped by 4 magpies per run for 3 months straight. It wasn't funny, but in hindsight it was funny. And for everyone else watching, it would have been hilarious.
Did you at any point consider running with a bike helmet and some cable ties?
I should have.
That would have been good, hey?
They got to the point where we thought, okay, this is such a significant part of the film, of the journey, we need to film it because we're making this adventure film. So Rye came out with his camera on a bike and, yeah, rather than the magpie sweeping me, it just relentlessly swooped him. So we have no footage of it, but that was awesome. I think it's funny that I ran for wildlife, but now I'm off the back of this more scared of Australian wildlife than I was before.
Yeah, that's cool. Definitely funny.
Everything. They're all terrifying.
For sure. And like, what was the most challenging part of the trip? I mean, obviously there's so many days, every day is different. Every day has its own unique challenge. But if there was anything that stood out as like the most challenging thing out of the tip to toe.
Challenging. Yeah, I guess your mind is the most challenging thing. Because I had to sort of build this mindset at the start. To be honest with you, when I started this, I was relatively confident in my capable abilities. I mean, I'd been a sport person all my life, but I didn't know how mentally I'd go with it. And I remember thinking before I started this, I'm not just going to have to exceed everyone else's expectations of me, but exceed my own expectations of what I'm capable of. And I remember thinking that feels overwhelming because I don't know if I can do this. You know, I hadn't ran 2 marathons or 3 marathons before. But in the end, I reframed that to say, okay, well, whatever you do get out here, you should celebrate because it's your own personal record. And so, yeah, I mean, I remember becoming really determined to get the world record, but constantly reminding myself that, you know, you're already doing for yourself, like don't compare yourself to anyone else. You're already doing an incredible thing. I remember feeling challenged when, yeah, because it's such a long run. I remember feeling challenged when you just have this long space of nothing. Like the roads just, there's a lot of Australia, as beautiful it is, that just isn't beautiful, which you would have seen too.
Yeah, for sure. And because whilst you did have a lot of days with community that we spoke of, there was also a lot of days solo, just out there. Just
solo. And like one day my headphones broke. So, and then it was raining. There's always headwinds. Why are they always headwinds? You never, just never get a tailwind.
Yeah, it's just like the wind gods know that there's a runner out there and it's like, let's just challenge them a little bit more.
I know. I remember I was speaking to Timmy Franklin, who's currently running the world, and he was telling me that he's sick of hearing the word unprecedented weather event. Like he's had tornadoes, floods, and I was the same. We got flooded in the gem field, so I had to run 3 days in the same like 4K radius because the roads were all closed. But I think you just have to learn to embrace that, right? Yeah. Isn't that what we sign up for? So
true. Absolutely. You have to just embrace the suck, everything about it. So one thing I'm really intrigued in, because obviously next year is my run around Australia and this has been a goal of mine. I announced it early 2018. So sometimes these projects take so long to get off the ground. How long was tip to toe? I guess when was the idea first born?
The idea was actually a childhood dream. And again, born from my personality of always setting tiny challenges for myself. You know, I'd race my parents to a cafe or I'd try and get up a hill as fast as I could. So it was there and it was, you know, it was something I thought of, but I kind of put it on a shelf and it gathered dust for decades. And my love for running, though, that never faded. I was running pretty competitively in the marathon scene. And yeah, through lockdown, when what I thought was my entire purpose, which was road marathons, was taken away from me, I had a big chance to reflect on what makes me happy. And when I really boiled it down, those 2 things were running and the wilderness. So running in the wilderness and that. And, you know, I had this cause that I was already doing other things separate to running to promote. And then I watched Bo Miles's run across the Victorian Alps, which I think is called Trials for Miles. And I thought, okay, that was the catalyst to say, all right, well, let's dust off that childhood dream you have and put it into focus, which I did. And then, so I had the idea. I thought, yep, now's the time. But I had 0 Instagram followers and then you just have to go, all right, how do I even get this off the ground? Do you just call, how do you get sponsorship? How do you fund it? You know, I had a great job, but no savings. And then all of a sudden this huge wall of things came up. So you just had to just dive in.
I love it. I love the naivety. I think that was me too. And that's everyone really who dives into this space. You're just like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. Yeah. And then you have to figure out the how. But I think you have the why first, and the why is obviously so key. And you would have been reflecting on your why so many times throughout the run.
Oh, absolutely. The why was the physical kind of challenge of getting the record, but it was also the cause. And so it was interesting because when I broke the world record, I was only on day 107, and I actually had a big slump then because I'd lost my kind of personal component of why. And I remember having a stern chat to myself and saying, hey, when you were a kid and you were romanticizing this dream you had, there was no world record. It was just get from A to B, preferably by running. Yeah. And so B was always Melbourne. So, although the reality of tip to toe was very different to my romanticized childhood dream, that was the goal. So why is that still not the goal? And then, the why for my cause became the sole driver to get me there when, the world record had been ticked.
Yeah, I love that. I think, and it's so cool to see how our dreams do evolve. I think sometimes we set these things and then it just, things change. But one thing that I'm really, really intrigued to know and to learn from you is, I guess, one thing that was really important for me. So when I got into running, I was like, I've got all these incredible people I look up to by listening to podcasts. And the first one was Samantha Gash. Mm-hmm. And it was late 2017. I ran my first marathon and I was like, I've got nothing to lose. I'm just going to reach out to her. Maybe she can help me. Maybe she can't. But if she gives me just a couple of tips, that'll be awesome. And I reached out to her and then she met me for coffee and we ended up building this beautiful friendship. And she referred me to my coaches, Jason DJ, who then went on to change my life. And it's amazing how when someone else backs you, just one or two people, it then really does change the trajectory of your life. And did you have any key mentors or someone that you could call in that time when you were like, COVID or 2020 and you're like, I want to get this dream off the shelves. It's been gathering dust. I want to do this. Who can be in my corner?
Yeah. So I had surprisingly my parents, they have always just believed in everything that I could do. And so they didn't go, oh, why will you give up your incredible job to do this? They're like, yeah, we'll take our annual leave and come with you. My partner, who is probably the most positive person, I think, the fact that we met right before we started planning this is the only reason I did it. I'm a bit of a people pleaser. So in every previous relationship I've been in, my whole life has been dedicated to making sure everyone else is achieving their dreams. I've never put myself first. So this is the first time I found myself in a relationship that felt equal. He's a filmmaker. So we came together and I said, all right, well, I have this story. And he's like, well, I've been waiting for a story to capture. So we kind of had this sole purpose. And surprisingly, everybody that I did tell, my coach I was most nervous about, because you're not really coachable when you're like, I want to run 300K a week for, infinite weeks. And it's like, well, all right. But he surprisingly got behind it. And the best thing about it was, and I don't know if this is just my personality, but a lot of people said, oh, if there's anyone that could do it, it's going to be you. You're injury resilient. You find the positive in most situations. Like, we think you can do it. So I had more support than not support. Yeah. And I think that helped a lot.
Yeah, huge. That's awesome. I think, a lot of people listening, like whether they're keen to take on their own adventure or just, maybe it is do an event, because I know there's certain events out there like, I don't know if you know, the Braveheart 777, 7 marathons in 7 days. So a lot of people, when they're training for something like this, they think that you have to run marathons in the build-up. And I take myself back to 2018. So 2019, I ran 50 marathons in 50 days. It was called the Jog for Joey campaign, raising money for the Compassionate Friends. And that was when I'd sort of just started working with my coaches, Jason DJ. And I went out there and I went and ran 2 marathons in 2 days. And it was horrific. Like the second day was like 5 hours 30. I was broken. My coach programmed me 2 25K days back to back. I thought, I'll just do 42.2. It's not going to matter because I've got to do 50. So why can't I do 2? And he gave me a big reality check on the phone. He's like, don't ever do that again. Like, do you want to get to the race and feel good and be ready? Or do you want to get injured before you even start? He's like, trust me, trust the process. And we never had anything like that again. I was like, I'm going to listen to him. And it's interesting now, like as a running coach myself, I'm having to give that same advice to some of the runners that I work with.
Yeah.
But it's just passion. Like, people love this stuff so much. We want to be the best that we can be. We think we got to go out there and do it. But as you said, you hadn't run 2 marathons in 2 days before you started.
Did not, no. And in saying that, to preface, I was a very good marathon runner. I was running, 2 hour 50 marathons. So I was fit. I was fitter than that, actually. I just didn't get the chance to race. And so I was running 130 kilometers a week prior to COVID, 2 sessions, a long run, and they were fast long runs, 35Ks at 4 or 5 pace. So I pushed and I was exhausted. In fact, I go over my training program now and I cannot believe I used to do those kind of weeks. In the build up to tip to toe, I did not do anything like that. I ran 100 max kilometers a week, and I took the brakes. I put the brakes on and went to the gym 3 times a week. I focused on stability exercises, single leg, core, glute work, and my whole focus was injury prevention.
Yeah, love that.
And my whole focus was strength, and I put on 5 kilos, which you'd think that's the worst thing to do, but my whole goal was to get to the start line healthy, because you're out there, you're going to get conditioned. If I was at breaking point that you sometimes are on the marathon start line, you're on that threshold between injury and elite, right? If I was there at the start of tip to toe, I only would have lasted a week. So I really had to make sure getting to the start line was, even if I was a little bit underdone, was the best possible way to be.
That's great advice. It's unbelievable. I think so many people go in overtrained to these sorts of things, and I had a very similar approach in Jace's prep with me. I don't think I was doing greater than 100K weeks, even 80-kilometre weeks, to then go and run, these massive weeks in the Cairns to Melbourne run. So it's about building durability and strength, and you spoke about all of that, and I love that, this holistic approach to training is what's allowed you to not only finish, but finish so well. Like, you were running so strong towards the end.
Yeah, weirdly, maybe not weirdly, because it's hard. There's not that many people to reach out to in these. There's not that many people that have done, I guess, an endurance event, such as, I think I actually reached out to you, and I reached out to a couple of other people who had done these multi-day huge events. And I said, hey, what do I expect? And the advice they all gave me was, don't quit in the first 2 weeks, because they're the hardest. But I thought, my naive self going into this was like, that'll be the easiest. That's when I'm the freshest. But no, it's not like that at all. Your body is not used to the load. It's not used to the daily grind, and I got all my injuries in that first month. But then after that, I felt so much more conditioned. Yes, there's accumulating fatigue, but it's a different feeling. You just your body knows what to do. And towards the end, and I don't know if this is because I was becoming more conditioned, or if I got closer to Victoria where my running community are, and they just came and ran with me and picked up the pace a little bit. So I naturally just, ran with them. But yeah, my last 10 to 15 marathons were, 45 minutes to an hour faster than my first 50, because I always made my goal 150. Mm-hmm. That was always the goal. Had I have not set myself 150, would I still be running now? Would I have been able to keep going? And it's hard to know, because you put everything into this goal and you see the finish line, so that's where your vision ends. But yeah, who knows how far you could go if you didn't set it.
Yeah, wow. I don't know. It's a great question. No one knows the answer.
No. How many days do you have to do around Australia?
Well, the current record is held by Dave Alley. Incredible man.
Yes.
Anyone who hasn't listened to that podcast, have a listen, because that was a great chat, and honestly, such a huge mentor for me. But he held that record. 175 days, 4 hours and 49 minutes. Yep. 5 months, 5.5 months.
But yours is the day you finish to when you get back, is it? Or is it a distance a day?
So it's... Wait, what was
so that? He said you said he did it in 140 something and so many hours. So is yours from when you press start to when you get back to the same spot?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, there's no set amount of Ks you need to do per day. Yeah. It's like the clock is always ticking.
Yeah.
So you could have a day where you do 100 Ks where you feel awesome, and you might have a day where you hobble through 20 kilometers. So we've set a few rules, I guess, in place. Because this has come through Ron Grant, who was the current record holder prior to Dave, and incredibly, Ron Grant was so supportive of Dave. He gave him all this advice and was a mentor, just like Dave is for me, which is awesome. He said that when he did it back in the 1980s, he had to run a minimum of 20 kilometers a day. That was just what they did.
Yeah.
So that was the same with Dave. So really the only rule is try and beat his amount of kilometers and do it in less time, and 20 kilometers a day. Well, that sounds like it's definitely possible, but you don't know where your body's going to be at. And Dave had a toe infection that nearly derailed the project. Obviously, your body under, I guess, like an infection, lymphatic system, everything like that, it can really put you in a bad way. So he was able to discharge himself out of hospital. Unbelievable. And then get a doctor to operate on his toe on the side of the road and just keep limping his way through the next few days, and eventually got back to running again and was able to hang on. So unbelievable. But I think, it's going to be interesting next year in taking that on. But I think one thing that I love is just how supportive Dave's been, which I know you're so supportive of other people in the running space, which I think is incredible. I saw just last week you had a Instagram live with Timmy Franklin. That's just who you are, isn't it?
I really want to share everyone else's stories. Yeah. I mean, it's like paying it forward in a sense, because as I said, I came from nowhere. I had I was relatively known in the running world, but that world in Victoria for me was very small. I didn't have any influence. So I reached out to people who had done incredible things before me, and I said, hey, can you help me, or can help me share my story? And it's a scary thing. And so now that I've had my experience and I've learned 1,000,001 lessons from it, I want to not only help people who have ideas, but to share the stories. So there's limelight on the fact that there's so many incredible people doing this. And for me, I think if you can see how many people are doing, and it doesn't have to be running, it can be an event like kayaking or paddling or literally anything, rock climbing, but to show how many people are out there doing crazy things, I think normalizes it a little bit. And so people feel like it's not something that only happens to the wildest, craziest people. It can happen that you can do it too if you have this goal. There's an amazing man, Alex, running across New Zealand at the moment. I've got someone running across the US the week after, a lady walking the length of the world, Lucy. So I've got this cool list of people who inspired me, who I want to now put a big spotlight on and say, look at these people. If you want inspiration, it's all around you.
That's huge. I love that. What were the dates that you were doing the tip to toe, like exact dates?
August 20th, I left the Cape.
Yeah.
And then I returned to Melbourne 150 days later on January the 16th.
So, you would have been running at the same time as Ned Brockman when he did the run from Perth to Bondi. That was, obviously a phenomenal run that he did. And, I was following it. I was following both of you at the time. It was huge. How did you find that? Were you like supporting each other's journey?
Oh, not really. I started 10 days before Ned. I actually reached out to him. We both ran Gold Coast Marathon in July and said, hey, I'm Erchana. I'm the one that's doing the opposite run to you. I didn't get a lot of support. I guess, to be honest, though, we were both focusing on our own events. He had a big team around him and was working hard towards his goal. It would be cool to maybe collaborate, but no, I mean, from my point of view, I never got anything back, so there's nothing I can do in that situation. Yeah,
well, I think you did incredibly well at the time managing all of that. Like Ned's run blew up. The virality of it would have been pretty hard for you at the time when you were out there.
Yeah, it was, to be honest with you, I couldn't at the time follow it because it was so hard for me because I was working so hard. I was getting up at 4 and running and then spending all this time trying to share my story. But for me, I didn't actually see it as Ned. I saw it for me personally, I saw it as almost like a societal thing, that the fact that there'd been so much sponsorship support thrown behind Ned's run, and I saw it almost as a gender issue than an individual issue. And it's something that I just kind of swallowed and just kept reminding myself why I was out there. And we were very different people. We are very different people. And I just had to tell myself that I still do today. It's like, well, you can't change who you are. You got to be yourself. You've just got to maintain positivity and keep sharing your story. Don't change. I can't be anyone else but myself. So I almost turned completely and dived more into me and just tried to forget about it all in a way, just for that period. In saying that, like, incredible effort, like the money raised is astronomical.
Yeah.
But I think that's where I was getting the most, I guess, where I was struggling the most a little bit is because I would have loved to be able to shed light on my cause to receive that much attention. And I remember more, not for myself personally, because I had my own goals, but was more to get the attention on the cause to be able to raise that, amazing amount of money. And I can't remember thinking, I could go to so many places. But in saying that, I'm very proud of both of us and, what I achieved, what he achieved. So
yeah, well said. Well, I think I just recently had Samantha Gash on the podcast, who's obviously a friend of yours as well. And we were talking about how well you managed it out there. I think it was incredibly tough at times, no doubt. Seeing that, I think we were just in awe of the way that you were bringing light to, a woman out there just kicking goals. And we know that you would have inspired so many young girls and other women and also men out there. You're inspiring me to continue to show up as, my authentic self and others to show up as themselves and be the best version of themselves. So
thank you.
Hats off to you. It was really well done. Let's dive into social media a little bit, because I think this is obviously in a similar realm. Obviously, there's a lot of lovers out there, but also haters. How did you find that?
There were so many haters, and it's so weird. I was doing such an innocent thing, running for wildlife. I got. In saying that, I should take that back. It was 99.9% love, and in fact, the support was something that got me through it. And I made a promise to myself on the first day that I would respond to everyone that messaged me through Instagram and or any social media platform or just on my phone, because I thought, wow, they've taken the time out of their day to reach out, check in. And some of the messages were next level. Mums would send me photos of their kids working in the backyard to earn pocket money to donate to the cause, and that just breaks your heart. So it's just in beautiful stuff. So I would always try and respond. But yeah, some of I made an actual video on, and that were the clean ones as well. You just have to get this thick skin. It's like when you put your own event into the world, it's like you immediately open yourself up for criticism.
I think if you're comfortable with it, I'd love to play that little snippet in this little podcast just to show people how you did manage the haters, because I think that was such an awesome approach.
I've been reading some of the most amazing comments, but every so often there's a bit of a bad apple, and they're hilarious. Let's celebrate them. Oh, there are some crackers in here. Here's one. My grandma runs faster than you. Oh, I should run with her. Oh, 300k a week, but you're not a real athlete. What's the point here? If she actually ran this distance, her body would be hating her. Well, it is. Get off the internet. Unremarkable. You're nothing compared to Ned Brockman. Running a marathon a day isn't even that hard. It's only a big deal because she's making one. Let's make 2023 the year of positivity and get behind a mate doing an awesome thing. I know I will be.
My favourite one of all of them was, I think there was a Guardian article on the fact that I'd raised over 100,000 for the Wilderness Society, and the top comment was, but why did you do it for wilderness? You should have done it for at-risk wildlife. You should have done it for an important cause like, cancer or something. I just remember thinking, you can also go and raise money for it. That's your cause. I still think that's important. I just have to, this one's close to my heart. It's just you just get shot down on your cause that you choose, the way that you're running. It's not long enough. It's not hard enough. I'm like, for me being such a supportive person, it's weird when it's not reciprocated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a hard one because people will everyone's got their own favourite charity and their own personal reasons why to support that. And, hearing more about your story today, I obviously knew a little bit in that you grew up in nature, but hearing, how much this Wilderness Society means to you, you can hear it, you can see it. It's pretty special. And that's what I think everyone should be able to do, to follow their passion and make a difference. If that's what they want to do, go out and do it. Life is too short to not take these things on, right?
Yeah, and just support people. There's the thing about the world is it's not like a pie. If someone else has success, it doesn't mean it takes from your success. We can all be successful. We can all support each other. It's okay to be. And if it's just just be kind.
Yeah. It's well said. So you said you've been running for a long time. I want to take it back now to, I guess, your childhood. Like, were you always really into running, cross country, that sort of thing in school?
No, not at all. I was a soccer player, and I played hockey, and I played cricket, and I played every sport under the sun except for netball because I kept getting fouled. I just was frustrated, so I stopped. Loved the sport, but not for me. But yeah, I played every sport under the sun. I actually got a scholarship to the US when I was in high school to play soccer over there, and then travelled to the UK to play further.
That's incredible.
So, I know. So my entire life was soccer.
Wow. What position were you playing?
I started as a striker and then in midfield, and then I think when they realised my strength was actually running, I got chucked out on the wing, and eventually just removed the ball altogether. But my whole running was just to stay fit for football. I loved it, and so I would run for fun just because I loved exploring. So it was more about seeing places for me, and even through my kind of early 20s when I'd be traveling through the seeing the world, I traveled around to different cities, and then the first thing I'd do was drop my luggage and go for a run. That was my way to get my bearings and to see things and immerse myself in the culture. And then I came back from all that traveling when I was 23 and had had enough of football or soccer. It's all I'd been playing. So I wanted to meet new people. So I walked across the road in Collingwood in Melbourne, and there was an athletics track there, signed up, fell in love with it immediately. It's like when you didn't realise you were good at something until you try it, and you're like, oh, I can do this. Like, I'm actually okay. Yeah. And I wasn't okay back then. I was probably not at all. But it was like, compared to I loved everything about it. I loved the community spirit. I loved the workout. You can just you can wreck yourself in 20 minutes on a track. Less than, probably 2 minutes.
If you put me through a 1K rep, it won't take you 2 minutes. It'll definitely take me closer to 3:30, but I'll be wrecked. Absolutely wrecked.
But I love that. And you don't need anything. It's a sport you can do with little money, and just, it's just a good way to be social.
Yeah, incredible. Well, one question I always ask every guest, that's like the question of the podcast, is tell me about your first 42K. So tell me about your first marathon. What was that experience? Where did you do it? How did it go?
All right, well, I'll tell you the first one and then the first real one. So the first one, like I said, I jumped into track, was okay at it, loved it though, but I've always had the body to be a marathoner. So I had been running for like 7 years or 6 years, and my coach had kept telling me, do a marathon, it's your body type. But I remember looking at them all crossing the finish line, and everyone was grimacing and no one looked like they were having fun. Yeah. I was like, that sport looks horrible. But eventually I did. I trained up for Gold Coast 2017 or 18, probably the same year as you.
Yep.
And my coach paced me, and he paced me for 2 hours and 45 minutes. And I was like, cool, yep, I can run a half in around that time. I was on paper, sure. But, the marathon's a beast. She'll chew you up and spit you out. So I got 20 kilometres into that run and just hit the world's biggest wall and pretty much crawled to 30, and then Gold Coast Marathon ends up at the start line at 30 Ks and just, leant over, game over. So DNF'd my first marathon.
Wow.
Went back to hating it pretty quickly. But no, I kind of got a little bit hooked. I saw the community. I saw everyone helping each other out. I saw the objective was to finish, not to, that was everyone's objective. No matter what, let's get to the finish line. And I liked that. Everyone had their own goal within the race. So I backed it off a little bit, and entered Sydney Marathon that same year. So it would have been in September. So July, so 2 or 3 months later, aimed for 2 hours and 55. So 10 minutes slower, and ran 251 or 252. So I just had to back it off that small amount.
Yeah.
And it made the whole thing so much more enjoyable. And it's a lesson I still live by today, is just, you've just got to pace it right. You cannot go out too hard.
So true. It's the hardest thing to work out, and I think it just takes, it takes years of running experience to get it. Even with parkrun, One of my mates, Beardy, had him on the podcast, had him on a Thursday, and he just helped me to a 5K PB that morning. And then he was filthy that I beat him. Like he was proud of me. He was proud of me. He paced me to it, but he's thinking I should have knocked him over. Like I'm a better runner than Shawnee. So he then challenged me on air on the podcast and said, all right, I want to verse you Saturday. 2 days from now, we're going again. We're doing a park run. And he smoked me by like 30 seconds because I've gone out and gone, I'm going to go out even harder, and tried to run a 3:10 first K and then blew out a 3:50. So I quickly learned that was just too much for me. Better to hold around 3:30 and sit there. So I think, that's such a good lesson. And also like hats off to you. What a marathon for the first marathon. I mean, I know you probably counted as your second.
My second, definitely my second. But that's it, right? It's like, it depends on your goals. I'd come from a running background. So I was, I had speed in my legs, but no endurance. Whereas right now, I got my VO2 max tested the other day, and I have it's 56, which it's so much lower, but that's because now I'm trained to run slow for a really long time, but not fast. So if I was to try that right now, it would be a very terrible race. So my goal now is to just layer little bits of speed on, like go out and do park runs and try and slap a 17:30.
I love that. Well, I think it's important, like a period of unstructured training following your event, such a big thing, 150 days. Like I felt that after 60 days. And it wasn't to the point where I hated running. I've always loved running, even on the other side of it, but my body just needed a rest. Like I'm sure it was the same with you, which I'm really keen to dive into a bit more. But it was this period of this unstructured training, and I fell in love with tennis, and that was sort of my way of navigating through that. Have you sort of lent on any more sports, like different sports, or is it more just been getting back into the gym since you finished? Like what's been your focus in the last 7 weeks?
Yeah, firstly, for the first 4 weeks, nothing. I didn't have the energy to get through the day, let alone find enjoyment in anything else. My enjoyment was just being awake for more than an hour and being able to focus. So when that fatigue faded, I found Pilates, which I used to love but never really prioritized, gym and walking, but also finding love in rest days. I always used to berate myself for taking too much time off. Even today, I haven't exercised. I've just been for a walk, and my old self, and I can even hear it a little bit being like, you should do something today. You should fit it in. Why haven't you done that? And it plays on my mind. And that's only just creeping back in now, but just actually enjoying doing nothing and not feeling guilty for it has been really nice as well, and just embracing the recovery.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. Like I think looking back now on the, period straight after my Cairns to Melbourne run, I did it way wrong. And, it was tough for me. I think, obviously I lost my coach during the run, so I didn't have that person to lean on with advice, but I was also just, it's part of my identity. I love it so much, like yourself, movement. And it's not so much always running, but just getting out there and doing something to feel better physically and mental health. So I was in the gym less than 48 hours after my run. Yeah, I went to do an upper body session. I was like, I feel skinny, I'm going to the gym. And of course I lifted terribly, but that was what I was saying to myself, and that's what I did. And then, like within 4 weeks, I'm doing plyometrics, I'm doing box jumps and the ski erg and things that I shouldn't have been doing. But again, I'm just like, I love training so much. This is what I want to do right now. And it probably took 6 months to properly recover, which is crazy.
I was about to ask, because I was like, so Sean, how long will I take to recover?
Well, I think, when I say like to properly recover, 6 months to be starting to get back in front. So now just recently I've hit a 5K PB. I feel like I'm full of energy. Another really good guide for me is I can do 2 sessions a day now. So I could run in the morning, do weights in the evening. Couldn't do any of that. I would do these sessions, but it would completely zap me. And the biggest one was the assault bikes. I don't know if you've done that before. Yeah. They're horrific. Anyone who says they like the assault bike is lying. I started back on the assault bike. I was so dizzy. I had no energy. And, 6 months later, then using the assault bike, I was like, whoa, now I see why I shouldn't have been on that, but I didn't realize it in the moment.
Yeah, I went to the gym yesterday or the day before, and it was the first time I did a session at the gym where I felt like I could I usually just feel like I'm getting through it. Like I drag myself there and I'm foggy and I'm not actually working out. I'm just lifting things. But yeah, I went back and I actually felt like I could get my heart to elevate and I actually could lift strong. But yeah, it knocked me back 2 days. So I know the guide and I know I'm nowhere near that yet. So yeah, I think I will take up something. I want to get into surfing.
Love that.
I live in Burleigh Heads and I don't surf because I'm a Melbourne kid. I want to learn to, surf down in Currumbin or, I'm a bit too nervous to go here in Burleigh. I don't think I'm good enough.
Currumbin Alley. It's fun.
Currumbin, yeah.
Well, are you coming to Salt Social tomorrow morning?
It's too early. I woke up at 7:45 this morning.
No, that's good. You do need your sleep right now.
I will go. I'm not in Queensland time yet.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love that. Well, yeah, you do need to respect that recovery. And I'm so glad that you are doing that and prioritizing these rest days. And I think surfing will be awesome for you. That's really, really cool. Is there anything you wish that you did better on the tip to toe? If we were to go back to tip to toe now, or it was sort of like in some cases the imperfect nature of it made it so perfect?
I think so. I know that sometimes your first marathon is your best marathon because you're naive.
Yeah.
You don't know how much it's going to hurt and you don't know what to expect. So you just go in completely naive to the pain. I don't think I would change. I mean, I would change a million things, right? But then you'd lose the experience of learning them all. Yeah. I would change... I would change some of the paths I took. I would work out a way to have better communication when I was up in those remote areas. I would probably get a car that didn't break down as often. There's so many lessons you do learn. I would have taken more stuff to treat myself for physio. I would have taken more bug spray.
Yeah.
But no, all in all, I mean, I made it to the finish line.
You didn't just make it. You crushed it.
Yeah, and I didn't get injured properly. I got little niggles, but I worked through them. So I'm a stronger person now, and I've learned so many lessons that I can now share and teach and take them into the next thing that I do, whatever that will be. So no, I don't think I
love
would.
that. Well, that was the right answer. How has life been different for you now since? Like, obviously, you made the move to the Burleigh Heads, which is incredible. Life on the Goldie is always good. But at the same time, has things been a little bit different on the other side? Obviously, the run did grow some real momentum and that then sort of does change your life. Yeah,
it has. It's completely changed. I mean, I haven't gone back to my previous role, so I'm kind of working for myself now, which is beautiful.
What did you used to do?
I was working so I'm a nutritionist, but I wasn't working in nutrition. I was working in kind of food supply, and it's still in food, but it was more of a commercial role. So I'm working more now in nutrition. I'm working more now in, working with companies to be more conservative and sustainable. And I'm an ambassador for a few events coming up. So I've got more of a public facing role where I'm doing a bit of speaking, and it's very different. And the funny thing is now though, I'm working for myself. So I have to regulate my own hours. And I found that I actually don't switch off when it's just me. And you might find this too. I don't take a lunch break anymore. I don't stop until I just run out of energy in the evening. So what I need to do now is learn to set myself boundaries now that I'm my own boss to make sure I don't burn out. But it's a different world.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think one thing that I've found sort of as an entrepreneur is that the discipline that it takes to be the runner that you are, that will really help you in what you're doing now in your business and working for yourself. It's tough, but you've got to get it done. And you're such a discipline driven person that maybe in your case, it's like you're going overboard, as you said, you're doing too much. It's hard to switch off, but I think you will find that just like you've found that piece in rest days sometimes with running, you'll find that with your work too. That's really, really cool that you're able to do that and more speaking as well and sharing that message, which is so key because I think, as you touched on, everyone has got a place, like there's room for all of us.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a beautiful thing that you're doing and getting such an important message about the wildlife out there and just also encouraging people to chase their dreams.
Yeah, that's what I want to keep doing. I want to, motivate people to go out there and do these big multi-day adventures and it doesn't even have to be running. It can be whatever sport it is. Just, go out there and give it a crack because you probably will exceed, everyone else's expectations on your own. So just do it.
So true. This is an interesting one because this was, I guess, asked of me. Someone asked me after my run, do you feel a pressure or an expectation to continue to continue doing these running feats now?
Yeah, I have been asked that a few times, and the answer is yes. I do feel pressure to do it, but also it's almost exciting because I've got this platform now where people will I've got a little bit of credibility. People will trust that I might be able to do it if I set myself a new challenge. So I'm looking at it as a positive, being like, cool, if I do want to do something, let's how big can we go now? And so I've already started planning my next thing. It's not going to be a record attempt per se. I'm more excited about a collaboration. Yeah. So I would love to work with some awesome runners, ultra runners that I've looked up to in the past, and almost use it as an opportunity to say, hey, do you want to work together and create an event together? So there's some cool people in the UK I've been talking to, and in the US as well. So I think my next thing will be a bit of a team
I love
adventure.
that. So watch this space.
Watch this space.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be 150 days again.
It doesn't need to be though. It's got to be what lights you up, which I love. So
absolutely.
That's huge. Huge. Well, I can't thank you enough for being so supportive of me through my Cairns to Melbourne run and with helping me promote next year's run. I look up to you so much with what you did for a charity so close to your heart as well. And more so just the fact that you really are genuinely wanting to help other people and share what they're doing. I think it takes a special person to do that. And I've no doubt, like Samantha Gash was for me, you'll be able to be a mentor for so many others in this space. So well done on every achievement you've had, not just the tip to toe. Obviously, that's one that obviously got us to know each other, but so many things before that. We know that you didn't just wake up the night before and say, I want to do this. So it's been a journey, and can't thank you enough for what you're doing in the world, and just keep being you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, all the best, and I look forward to running with you soon. We hope that you love the podcast, and if you did, please leave a review and share it with others. Did you know that you can train with us at First 42K for as little as $9.95 per week? If you're looking to fall in love with running and achieve your first 5K, 10K, half marathon or marathon, unlock your 1 week free trial at first42k.com.au. I'd like to thank our partners at HGG Performance for providing the podcast space. HGG Performance manufactures strength and rehabilitation equipment, which is hugely beneficial for runners looking to improve performance and prevent injury. Use the code FIRST42K for 10% off their products. Until next time, live happy and run strong.